8th of December when Judge Jeanette Treviso rules on whether to continue or throw out the case in the Western Cape High Court. The defense is asking that the case be dismissed based on the testimony so far. The prosecution has conceded that its case relies heavily on the testimony of convicted taxi driver Zola Tongo. Dewani is on trial for allegedly orchestrating his wife's Annie's murder in November 2010. Advocate Adrian Mop has accepted that there were numerous contradictions in the testimony of the state star witness, taxi driver Zola Tongo, but says Tongo's allegation that Dewani offered him 15,000 rand to have his bride killed is not that far-fetched. Tongo's credibility came under intense scrutiny yesterday when the defense made their submissions. The state says it's clear that the co-conspirators were not professional hitmen, but that they saw an opportunity to make easy money. In response to the judge on why Dewani himself was robbed during the hijacking, if he was indeed a co-conspirator, Mop said it would have been very strange for him to emerge from the events with his trimmings intact. The case continues. Well, to tell us more about today's hearing, we are joined on the line by SABC reporter Vanessa Puna. Vanessa, very good afternoon to you. Now, the state finally had their chance to present their opposing arguments. Tell us about their arguments.
Yes, good afternoon to you. I think the state has put out what could be the last attempt to convince Judge Jeanette Treviso that Shrien Dewani was indeed a co-conspirator in his wife Annie's November 2010 murder. As you said earlier, Advocate Adrian Mop took the court through the 62-page heads of argument that he had prepared to argue against the court granting this Section 174 application for the dismissal or discharge of the case against Shrien Dewani. Advocate Mop detailed to the court that although Zola Tongo's testimony, parts of it, were not completely reliable, that you couldn't draw a line through his testimony, is what he told Judge Jeanette Treviso. He's also talked about the roles of Mondi Mbulombo, the middleman in the murder, as well as the other accused, Nzomadoda Kwabe and Tolile Ngeni. At one point, Advocate Mop said that the planning of this murder of Annie Dewani was so comical that if it wasn't for the tragic results, and that is that she had died on that fateful night, that it could actually be laughable or comical. And he was referring here to the haphazard way in which the planning of her murder and the hijacking was made after the initial request, he alleges, by Shrien Dewani to Zola Tongo to hire a hitman to have his wife killed. Now, we've seen this trial into its 8th week this week, and Judge Jeanette Treviso, after having to go through painstakingly so 127 pages in the heads of argument of the defense, and then also 62 pages of the state's heads of argument in this application, has then, I think, rightfully said she needs all the time to actually go through, to consider these arguments put before her, both orally and written submissions, before she makes a very weighty decision. And that decision, at the end of the day, could have huge implications. Should she rule in the defense's favor, that is the end of Shrien Dewani's trial. He will then be expected to leave South Africa, and that would be the end of it. There won't be an opportunity for the state to appeal this 174 application ruling, and neither can it be retried. Should she decide to rule in not rule in the defense's favor, that would then mean the defense has a number of options. They could go on and call witnesses, even put Shrien Dewani himself in the dock, or alternatively, they could then close the case, and then, of course, the judge will have to then weigh only the evidence, and then the credibility of all the state witnesses will come into play. So for the next 2 weeks, I think it will be a waiting game. I can expect that all eyes will be on Judge Jeanette Treviso on Monday, the 8th of December, when she makes this all-important ruling in this Section 174 application for the discharge of the case against Shrien Dewani.
Vanessa, just to further speculate, does it really look like a possibility that Dewani could be discharged of the state? I mean, there was no new real physical evidence presented except testimonies by the co-accused, hence the Criminal Procedures Act proposal here.
Yes, look, at this stage, having sat through all 24 days or so of court proceedings since this trial started on the 6th of October, there is a very real likelihood that the judge may find in the defence's favour and then rule positively for them in the Section 174 application. What's interesting to note that today Advocate Adrian Mock also then, in closing his submission, will say to the judge that at this point the only evidence, or rather that there's no evidence presented by Shrien Dewani, and that what was put to the various state witnesses in this court could not be deemed as his version at all. He quoted from, for example, a text wherein Shrien Dewani had explained to his family and to the family generally opposed the murder what had taken place. He again mentioned that there was no mention of the helicopter trip which Shrien Dewani now claims he had the money for and which he was planning to pay Zola Tongo to arrange. Advocate Adrian Mock says that this is very strange, and I think what he really wants to see, or really wants to put before the judge, is that she hasn't heard really, in essence, from Shrien Dewani, except what he has submitted to court in his plea explanation on the very first day of this murder trial.
Vanessa, thank you so much for that. That's SABC reporter Vanessa Puna giving us the Dewani trial update today. The state presented their opposing arguments to have the charges against Dewani dropped.